My brother messaged me suddenly. You are no longer part of this family. Do not return here. My parents supported his words without question. 2 days later, I got a serious call from my grandfather's attorney saying, "Arrive at my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. What followed afterwards had my entire family begging. My name is Maya, 28 and I never thought I would be the kind of person who would have a story that felt like something out of a family drama movie, but life has a way of showing you exactly who people really are when you least expect it. Everything began with a text message, short enough to seem small, yet heavy enough to reshape everything I knew about family. It was sent by my older brother, Ryan, at exactly 10:13 p.m., in the same family group chat where we shared birthday wishes, grocery lists, random memes, and planning messages for holidays. But this time, his message was not some casual update or joke. It was final. Cold. Sharp. You're no longer part of this family. Don't come back. There was no lead-up. No phone call. No explanation about what was happening or why. And I remember staring at that message in disbelief, wondering if my eyes were misreading the letters, but they weren't. My phone was working just fine, unfortunately. I waited, clinging to a tiny sliver of hope that my parents would ask what he meant, or defend me, or at least show some shock at the words. But what came next was worse than silence. My mother reacted with a thumbs-up emoji. My father liked the message. As if removing me like trash was something to support. Something they approved. Something they wanted. It felt like someone had reached straight into my chest and squeezed until I couldn't breathe. I kept reading those words again and again, asking myself what I had done that was so unforgivable that my own family decided I was worth less than a simple conversation. But the truth is, this didn't come out of the blue. It had been building slowly, quietly, painfully for years. My brother always needed to be the center of attention. If I achieved something, it felt like an attack to him. If someone praised me, he made sure to remind everyone of something he had done that was bigger, or louder, or, in his words, more important. Our parents encouraged the pattern without even realizing. My father would always say things like, "He's a boy, he just has a big ego, let him have his moments." And my mother would look at me with those soft eyes filled with expectation and whisper words I grew up hearing so often that they became part of my skin. Just be the bigger person, Maya. Which really meant stay small. Stay quiet. Don't shine too bright. Don't make him feel less. My whole life became a series of silent apologies for existing. But what made the message even more twisted was the reality behind the claim Ryan made to justify it. He said I never helped the family. He said I did nothing. He said I was selfish. Yet I was the one who drove our mother to her chemo appointments every week when she was sick. I was the one who stayed up late organizing Dad's medication schedule when he couldn't keep track. I was the one checking in, bringing groceries, sending birthday gifts, showing up. Ryan would show up for photos, for praise, for credit, but never for the hard parts. Yet somehow, he became the hero in their eyes while I became the invisible one. That night, I sat on my couch and scrolled through months of messages, looking for the moment where I became the enemy. I saw conversation after conversation where I was reaching out, offering help, trying to be included, trying to care. And I saw months of them giving me little more than one-word replies or ignoring me completely. And the more I looked, the more it became clear that I had always been on the outside. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. I cried that night. Not because I felt unloved, but because I had been loving people who never even tried to love me back. The next 2 days passed in a fog of confusion and quiet pain. I turned off my phone because I needed silence. Or maybe I wanted to see whether anyone cared enough to reach out. They didn't. And then everything changed. At exactly 8:04 the second morning, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I answered out of habit more than curiosity, expecting a telemarketer or some automated voice recording. But instead, a calm human voice spoke. "Miss Maya, this is Mr. Patel. I am your grandfather's attorney. You must be at my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp. This is regarding an urgent family matter. Please do not be late." And before I could ask a single question, the call ended. I spent the entire day trying to guess why I was being called. My grandfather and I had always shared a quiet but strong bond. He was one of the only people who ever asked how I was really doing. One of the only people who saw when I was sad even when I tried to smile. One of the only people who never asked me to shrink myself to make someone else more comfortable. He saw me. I didn't realize how much that meant until I lost everyone else. The next morning, I arrived at the office early because I couldn't sit still at home. The law firm was quiet, the walls lined with shelves of thick books that looked older than me. Mr. Patel greeted me with a polite smile and led me into his office. He handed me a folder with my name on it, and inside was a letter written in my grandfather's familiar handwriting. My dearest Maya, if you are reading this, then the truth has come to light. I have watched the way your family has treated you. I have watched you give and give with nothing given back. I have watched your heart break in silence. And I want you to know that you are not invisible. I see you. I always have. What comes next is not about punishment, but about fairness. I want you to have peace. I want you to have freedom. Please trust that this is done with love, not anger. My hands trembled as I held the paper. Then Mr. Patel told me the part that made my heart stop. My grandfather had changed his will. I was now the sole beneficiary of his house, his savings, his investments, his personal trust, everything. And it was already final. Signed. Protected. Untouchable. I could barely speak. Why me? I asked, even though deep down I already knew. Because he saw you, Mr. Patel replied. And he saw how they treated you. I walked out of that office feeling a mix of shock and love and grief and relief that I could not name. I went home and sat in silence, holding the letter against my chest, crying without sound. And then the calls started. My family received official notices about the transfer. They learned that everything they assumed would be theirs was now legally mine. The house, the money, the heirlooms, the future. It didn't take long before my phone exploded with messages. Dozens of missed calls. Hundreds of texts. Some were angry. Some were confused. Some were disgustingly entitled. The same brother who told me I was no longer family wrote, "You need to fix this. Call the lawyer and tell him there was a mistake." I didn't reply. My mother called 15 times in a row, leaving voicemails that started angry, then turned guilt-soaked, then became begging. "You know your brother needs that house. We deserve this. You're destroying the family. How could you do this to us?" I didn't reply to her either. The next day, they showed up at my apartment. All of them. My father banging on the door as if breaking it was an option. Ryan standing behind him with his arms crossed like he owned the hallway. My mother crying into a tissue that looked untouched by real tears. I opened the door and for the first time in my life, I did not feel small in their presence. My father began shouting accusations, saying I manipulated my grandfather. Ryan said I must have forced him. My mother reached for my hand and whispered, "Please give it all back and you can come home again." And that was the moment everything became clear. They did not want me. They wanted what I had. I took a breath and spoke with a calm I didn't know I had. "You told me I was no longer family. You didn't ask why. You didn't care how I felt. And now that there's money, suddenly I matter again. I won't go back to a family that only loves me when I'm useful." They tried to argue. They tried to threaten. They tried to guilt. But they could not change anything. Because the decision was already signed. Already legal. Already final. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself. Over the following weeks, the community learned the truth. Relatives whispered. Friends asked questions. The perfect family image my parents worked so hard to present started cracking. People saw the reality they tried to hide. Ryan got angry. But anger couldn't pay his bills. He had to grow up. Finally, my parents had to downsize. They had to live with the fact that the person they treated like a ghost was the one my grandfather trusted most. And me? I moved into my grandfather's house. I repainted the walls. I planted flowers he always loved. I filled the rooms with light and peace and space to breathe. I visited him often and held his hand while we talked about everything and nothing. He passed a year later, resting peacefully, knowing I was finally safe. Did my family ever apologize? No. But I learned that losing people who never chose you is not a loss. It's freedom. And that's how I lost my family. and finally found myself. When I left the lawyer's office, the world felt different, as if the air around me had shifted into something sharper, clearer, realer. I walked slowly down the street, feeling the warmth of the sun against my skin, but inside, there was a quiet storm forming, a sense of finally being seen after years of being treated like a shadow in my own family. My grandfather had always been the only person who looked at me like I was a whole human being, not a responsibility, not a comparison, not a mistake. He would hold my hands when I visited and tell me that kindness was not weakness, that silence was not the same as surrender, that some battles were won simply by continuing to live in a world trying to shrink you. But despite all his wisdom, a small part of me had always feared that he, too, might one day see me the way my parents did, as something less, something replaceable, something to be put aside. Yet now, standing in this moment, I felt his love wrap around me like a shield, a promise that, even in his absence, he was still protecting me in the most powerful way a person could by choosing me. And the more I let that realization sink in, the more I understood that what my family had taken from me was never belonging, because I had never truly belonged to them in the first place. What they took was the illusion. What my grandfather gave me was the truth. And the truth had weight, the kind that could break everything else open. Later that evening, when I finally turned on my phone, the notifications began exploding one after another. Missed calls, voice messages, family group chat flooded with urgent demands, accusations, and sudden, desperate attempts to rewrite history. My mother's messages shifted from cold anger to forced sweetness, the kind that comes only when someone is afraid of losing something they thought they controlled. Maya, sweetheart, we should talk. My brother sent voice notes full of shouting, accusing me of manipulating Grandpa, claiming I must have tricked him, that it wasn't fair, that I was tearing the family apart, conveniently forgetting that he had been the one to cast me out without a second thought. My father stayed silent until the end, sending only one message: "We can resolve this if you come home. Not we're sorry, not we were wrong," just another attempt to pull me back into the cage they thought I would never be strong enough to leave. I stared at the screen and felt something unexpected, not rage, not pain, not even satisfaction. Just distance. A new, quiet distance that said, I had already walked away long before they ever told me to leave. And now that I had something that could never be taken back, my grandfather's trust, his belief in me, and the life he chose to leave in my hands, I finally realized that I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Not to them. Not ever again. I put the phone down and let the silence settle. For the first time in years, my heart didn't hurt. I had lost a family, yes, but I had gained myself. And that was something they could never tear away again. This time, I chose me.